I'm Michael Welp, one of the founders with Joanne of White Men as Full Diversity Partners. So I was one of the original members of the Sandpoint Men's Group, which was, when I was first asked about it, was a great way for me to take the work that I do and just continue my own journey around my work as a man and practice what I preach.
And the most important thing men can do for everybody on the planet is to really take a look seriously at their own identities and how much of that they hide when they're in organizations. Things would be a whole lot easier if there were more men's groups. I'm an executive coach, believer in human development. The work is about people building their capacity to become more interculturally competent, to look at whether or not their worldviews match or don't with other people who work in their same organizations, or if it's a stranger lab, people from different industries and different backgrounds. It's work around how do I learn to have really difficult conversations at work that have impact on the results that the organization creates and has impact on people's performance individually as well as collectively. How do you have, we call them the undiscussables, how do you have those conversations when the people that they go to when they leave work don't necessarily have the skill to have those conversations and might have been even taught not to have them at all. We have a lab called Women of Different Tribes, and for 3.5 days we attempt to do what the guys in this men group have been doing for 9 years, which is to expose oneself to insights that would have them actually look at the choices they make around their behavior and how they support or not support other women. How they do, I'm being polite to say support and not support. How about attack, sabotage, that kind of stuff on a regular basis. So I don't know that the work is that different. I just think that we are audacious enough to expect that in 3.5 days we can open a door in someone's mind and heart that they can't close again. So I don't think that improving oneself, which is the basis of the work we do so that organizations improve, is all that different from the men's group. The major, if there's one difference, it's the long-term intimacy that a men's group can have over time versus the I'll use the L word, the love that can be generated for a total stranger that then exists if those people work in the same organization that they can use when things are challenging at work. So I don't know that I would call it that different.
4.5 to 5 hours a week, every week, is a pretty strong commitment.
Yeah, since most men don't have 15 minutes to spend.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about it, it's pretty extreme to think that kind of dedicated time over the long haul that they've been together. It just breeds more. In our labs, we often ask people to partner up with someone, and we know that there are some of those relationships, 5 years now has passed since that lab of 3.5 days, and those folks are still connected. So it seems to me that work that's depth sounding has a way of energizing people to keep doing it.
I can't hide.
There's no hiding out, are you kidding?
Those guys know me, and you know me too over 15 years, so I can't hide from you either. Yeah. And
we purposely put them in challenging positions to challenge their mindsets. That's one of the things we say we do, change mindsets. And I think that's important for men because there's been one mindset that has been supported, promoted,
Whose interest is it that you're doing this for?
Yeah.
Who's asking for this work that you're doing?
That's a good
Who
question.
pays for it?
Who pays for it?
I think it's the executives in organizations that realize there's a lot at stake and they're losing a lot of potential for employees who aren't staying because they don't feel seen or accepted. or they just feel like it's just too different to fit in what they experience as a male-dominated norm of workplace.
The biggest single percentage of people leaving corporations are women, and they're leaving to start their own businesses because of exactly what he just said.
And we don't even as men realize that there is this male-oriented, for the most part, whole way of being that others are assimilating to, because we just equate it with humanness, because we've never looked at our maleness and seen how, oh yeah, there is a culture there is a dynamic, and then everybody else is fitting into it, and they don't necessarily want to. And then we start doing that journey, and we realize, oh, we're doing the same thing. We're assimilating into that too, and we're not all alike either. So we may think initially, gosh, I can help other people with their issues, and then in the middle of our journey, it's like, wow, this has everything to do with me as a parent, a spouse, a leader.
A
And that's where I think the work with the men's group overlaps. And I think you're right in terms of, if you look at all the diversity work happening in corporations, we are probably most like a men's group in terms of both a group dynamic, group process oriented, challenge support environment.
Well, I want to challenge you and I right now, because you focus on diversity. And I think what our clients wind up getting from us is leadership development that uses diversity as a lens to look through. Because we don't do the classic diversity training. We've never done it. As long as I'm a partner, we won't do it.
What is that?
It's, let's get together and blame white people for all of the wrongs in the world. Let's tell white people to shut up and non-white people get to talk. How do you build partnership like that? That's just crazy. You know, it makes no sense. It's nonsense. Well, anyway.
Or you don't even touch that topic, and you say, let's just respect each other's individual.
Oh yeah, the "we are all one" Michael Jackson routine.
We do work. We go through a diversity door in an organization to do work, and in the men's group, that's not where we enter our work in Sandpoint Men's Group. We can do a lot of work on our own self, deep growth, and not necessarily look at what it means to be white, or in some elements of male gender dynamics, although that does come up a fair amount. But it's so there are different doors to enter this sort of looking and knowing yourself more. One of the great things about men's groups is that it indicates a great example for other men to say, wow, there's a lot that I can do around my own growth. I don't need to wait until somebody else brings up an issue in my face, and then I blame them perhaps for having a chip on their shoulder.
You got it.
It's like I can do a lot of work myself or gather amongst other men. It's our job to challenge each other and support each other around our own growth issues, and not lay the expectation on our spouses to be our emotional buoys solo by themselves, or our colleagues at work or whatever to raise gender issues or other diversity issues. Like we need to do that for each other.
How do they work with that?
How do the men work with what?
With realizing that they're white supremacist and that they have that in their roots and that might affect their lives.
I like that you said white supremacist.
Isn't that correct?
It is correct.
Well, that's part of it.
And
yes.
it gets very watered down, because it's not polite to say what it really is. But if you look at the structure of the United States, it's built on white supremacy. And that does not mean that every white male or every white person is racist. What it means is that they can walk around blind to the structural implications of the way this country was designed and the way it's still being designed. Or we wouldn't have white legislators all over this country attempting to suppress the vote of certain people.
I don't think anybody I touch would ever describe themselves as racist, and yet there's a lot of passive not knowing what I don't know or think about around unconscious bias that have been grown in all of us, I would say, and that leaves me blind to what you experience every day that I don't deal with. And so it's not about, and most people think, well, I'm not racist because they're not actively, they don't think of themselves as racist. And my experience is most white men I work with are very good intended thing and believe in equality and want equality and stuff, but are not aware of what we don't know, and about different realities, different perspectives, and that's our privilege to not have to look at it unless we won't choose to. Often define my identity by my intent. Well, I don't have any intention to discriminate or to be blind to things, but my intent and my impact are not always aligned. And if I look away or I don't consciously say, I'm going to dig at this and lean into it, and a lot of times guys will defend their good guyness or their good intent. I have good intent. But really, you're not going to learn much when you're focused on defending that. Focus on the impact. And I think I am not your typical white guy, actually. I'm not an alpha
Even
male.
though you're from Iowa.
Yeah, even though I like corn, and now I like potatoes. I live in Idaho. Sounds mainstream, doesn't it? But it's like, I'm more reflective, more quieter, more observant, more listener, and then speak when I feel moved to. Sometimes in our group we have a modus of the fast guys who intervene and can call somebody on their behavior and sort of work each other, kind of get more of a center focus voice. And just as the film that you did last night was really powerful about me really finding, just sinking into myself even more, finding I'm bringing in different style here that's really valued, or becoming more valued or more seen, and I need to believe that in myself without waiting for others to believe it. And so that's it's a great part of my journey. That's why I get a great context of working with Joanne, and a whole nother context other than the men's group is I get to go back and forth between very different environments and do the same process of learning.
He would be seen as less than by very successful, highly extroverted, super critical, successful white
Not
men.
aggressive enough.
Not aggressive enough.
to win the business and to be able to carry the day, or that would be their fear.
But I've had clients question whether he was the right person for the job, because our other partner is voluminous. He never stops talking. He thinks he can do everything and anything. He's got a lot of super confidence. He's highly successful. He's 6 feet? 6'2"?
Probably, maybe not. Too much.
So he's like, he feels like he can walk anywhere, say anything, even if he doesn't know what he's talking about. He acts like he knows what he's talking about. What does he call that?
Acquired male answer syndrome. When asked a definitive question, give a definitive answer whether you know what you're talking about or not. Sort of a. He owns that, as many of us sort of, we get to. He doesn't have to dress as strictly as you have to dress, and he never gets questioned about his dress. Neither do I. You get questioned.
Well, actually,
or your credentials.
He got questioned.
Well, he probably took it to an extreme.
Yeah, well, it's I'm reflecting back on an answer that you gave Michael to Maya around your being intent focused, your group being more intent focused, and it raises that cultural generalization around whites being more intention focused and non-whites being more what happened focused. Intent doesn't matter, it's what happened. And so it raises a question for me about how do the men's group, either wives or significant others or partners, and I understand it's heterosexual as far as I know, so I'm putting partner in there on purpose, but what are the implications for what happens in the men's group for the partners, wives, girlfriends, whoever they are, of these men? Because clearly something happens. If you don't have a men's group for 9 years and nothing happens. So it just raises I'm curious as to whether the group or individual men in the group talk about significant happenings in their interactions with others outside of the group as a result of being in the group. Because clearly that's what we ask our clients to do.
Well, we do. I mean, there's a lot of discussion around, it's all about how do I show up as best as a partner with my significant other and or as a parent or whatever work. So yeah, it's very much that. There's a lot of there's a lot of economic diversity in this area that's not part of our men's group. You know, we could do a much better job of having a mixed income level in our group, and that would contribute significantly, sort of an unspoken issue in this community. So I don't think there's a strong enough connection probably in the whole concept of men's groups as they're done in this country around the core need to keep that focus through a diversity lens or also through a systemic advantage.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. You've really intrigued me now. I've got all sorts of questions.